Yeah, we're right on the time, and we're just sorting out setup issues here. So just one more minute, and we'll get started. Thanks for your patience. Yeah, why don't you go start?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start talking while Greg is getting ready to share the slides. To give a little bit of background, um, we have a education, mentoring, and outreach directorate. Some of you are familiar with it, and some of you are new. This directorate has a fairly wide remit at the moment, um, and so we wanted to have a open meeting. It was going to be a side meeting, and then we wanted to allow remote participation, so we um, uh, made it in this particular context. So hopefully everybody can uh, figure out where the meeting is. I do know there's an issue with which button you need to push on Data Tracker, but it is on Data Tracker and it is available via Meet Echo. And anybody that doesn't know that doesn't know because they're not on Meet Echo now. But I sent it out to a couple people that asked me individually. Um, so I am Karen O'Donohue, and this is
Greg Wood?
Uh, can we just do a real quick around the table and then remote to see who, and just introduce yourself quickly? And don't forget to turn on the microphone.
My name is Michelle Cotton, and I'm with AMS, the Secretariat.
Hello, my name is Lee Berkeley-Shaw. I'm with the IETF administration.
Hi, it's Pete Resnick, first-time sitter-inner.
He's on the ombuds team.
Oh, there's that too.
Yeah. Rich Sauls, I work with Karen on the working group chair stuff and longtime Emodir person.
Hello, I am Zhen Chaoli from Apple. I'm new here.
Hi, I'm Guo Zhang from Apple.
Hi, I'm Daphne Nisbeth from NSA.
Hi, I'm Andrew Campling from 419 Consulting.
Oh, sorry, remote people. Robert, do you want to introduce yourself?
I don't know how to do ordering, but yeah, I'm Robert Sparks, IETF LLC and Tools team.
Hi everyone, this is Dhruv Dhuri.
All right, thank you.
No success.
No success? Well,
Sorry.
so at this point, I'm going to share.
Yeah.
Oh, Nick, we have one more person added. Hi, Nick.
Yeah, sorry, I'm late. Hi, all. Nick Doty, Center for Democracy and Technology. Good to see you, sort of.
All right, so we're going to use, you need to unshare.
Yeah.
You can figure out how to unshare.
Hi, also Alice Rousseau is here from the RFC
Oh, hi.
Production Center.
Hi, Alice.
Hey, Alice.
Let's see. Which one do I want? Is that the right one? No.
Sorry, we're experiencing a unique intersection of Emodir and having multiple sessions during the week, and not quite being a full working group, I think, and me using old software.
Well, no. So now the issue we have is I haven't properly set up my browser on that laptop, but I know it's set up correctly on this laptop. So we are on top of things.
Yeah.
But just 1 second and I'll start doing the slides. Do you want to talk a little bit about the plan before I get the slides up?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk through that. Well, first of all, I think we need to say that this session is being recorded, and the note well applies. So it's super important. If you haven't had a chance to read it recently, I like to read at least 3 times a year just to remind myself. And things like the anti-harassment policy and privacy policy that apply to all IETF contributions, of which this is one, including and also includes email lists, contributions, and in the chat and so forth. So yeah, take a moment to read that if you haven't lately. It's good stuff. Yeah, so with that, we can talk a little bit about the overall plan and just how we got to here. This group and others have worked to sort of create an outline of the things that we're hoping to get done in this year. And it was the first time I think that we put together a shared vision like that. So it took a little while to get together, but now we have one. And I know work has already begun on some components of that. And as soon as Karen shares, we'll be able to share it. But you can also find it if you're logged into Data Tracker, or if you can see the agenda, you can download the slides yourself and take a look. Or if you go to the Emodir Data Tracker plan, you get a link to the wiki, and there'll be information about the plan there. So today what we're hoping to do is just provide a quick update on it, get some on the plan, various aspects of it, and maybe get some further ideas or thoughts about how things are going. And Karen is like 3 clicks away from sharing the document. Any questions so far? I'm just going to pause. Pete, did I say the right things about Noel?
What do I know?
Okay. Well.
I knew you would say that.
Okay, and we have slides. Pretty exciting. Oh yeah, the other thing we're covering is like included in the what's going on so far is the stuff that's gone on this week so far, and will go on.
So we've done this.
Yep.
And now we're here.
Yep.
So as a quick reminder, I wanted to go over the Emodir plan, but Greg has already pretty much done that. Since we're 10 minutes in, I think we might move on. I did want to just, and highlighting this, if you look at the plan itself, Miria is working with a group of people that are doing some quick start guide activities, and so that activity is partially underway. Greg is doing a number of the things that are currently listed under informational materials, so if you're interested in that, you can speak to him about that. As Rich already mentioned, Rich Sauls and I do the Working Group Chairs Forum. We are interested in any ideas for topics that should be held in there, and we're also interested in any people that are willing to help work and organize that. Online training. This is some training that is being produced, and Greg is working on that. And I'll have to admit, Greg, I was working on getting my thing up, and I don't know if you spoke about it in any detail.
I did not yet.
Excellent. And then there's the IETF Newcomers program, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we did here and what we're planning for the future. And Michelle and I are working on that. And then we have deep dives, tutorials, technical presentations. And right now, with the exception of the work by the IESG to produce some deep dives, our tutorial work is paused at the moment. So that's also something, if you're interested in pursuing, that would be great. So at this point in the agenda, update on chairs training. Greg.
Good. Can I ask a quick question first?
Absolutely.
So, and maybe you want to answer this as you go through other stuff, but obviously Greg is, you know, a paid LLC employee. How much of this stuff is staff supported stuff with volunteer help versus volunteers have to just kind of take this on, blah, 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 blah.
Some of that is called out in the plan. I mean, if you see Greg or AMS staff listed there, then obviously that is supported. If you see it being led by or worked on by us,
Chances are it's not.
Right. But
Okay.
the thing, part of what we're looking for is help in identifying where it would be best to put those resources. And
Okay.
so for
Karen,
future
could
years.
you be careful to be close to the microphone?
Sorry, would you like to speak, Robert?
Asking if you could be careful to be close to the microphone. You were speaking
yes.
away from it just then, and it made it very hard to hear you.
We will turn into the mic. Yes,
we'll do a better job. Thank you, Robert. So it really varies, but I think if there are good ideas that seem implementable and we can scope the resourcing, then there is some resourcing available. But I think for 2022, you'll see the plan, and I think for additional stuff, we probably ought to think about what we might want to do in 2023 and how we should get that resource.
And part of the reason I even asked the question, which might apply to other folks, is that there's stuff that I would be willing to help, but not have others sort of depend on my help existing at all times. And if it's a purely volunteer thing, if I'm not doing the work, someone else is getting screwed.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm not doing the work and there's staff involved, at least someone's getting paid, which is better.
Right. I really see a lot of improvement. I think we're doing a better job of utilizing paid resources to help us get the kinds of things done that we want to do. And Greg's going to talk about the working group chairs training stuff, and that's a really good example of that in my mind.
Yeah, can I just add one thing?
Absolutely.
So one of the things that this first round of planning actually was about was figuring out, given a limited set of resources, where did folks want to apply those, and where was their energy to get things done when there weren't resources available. So that's exactly the question that we tried to get an approximate answer to during the couple of months that we were going through the planning, and I'm sure we'll do a better job of it next year.
Okay.
Yep.
So with that, actually, Greg, now we're ready for the update on chairs training.
Yeah, fantastic. So as we just noted, this is an area where it was pretty clear that outside energy and expertise was needed to accomplish what was being hoped to be accomplished. And we also had the experience of our first run at this last year. Yeah, so just a quick update. We've started conversations with the same folks that developed and delivered the training last year. There's a group of community members that are, most of them are chairs or past chairs, or and especially there are a few new chairs that are involved. to provide guidance to the as subject matter expertise to the development and delivery of the training. And so that we just had our kickoff call on that last week, and we're on track to follow basically the same schedule that we did last year per plan, with some slight changes. So one of the things that we really learned last year is that people found the interaction among chairs that the sessions offered to be really, really valuable. So instead of trying to cover all this material, we're focusing on the material that was most highly rated, and to have longer interactive sessions. So tweak the curriculum, if you will, to really focus on interactivity. For, I think we have it's either 4 or 6. I need to go back and look. Multi-hour, like 2-hour longer sessions. So the idea is that people will get together, have a chance to interact, and then build relationships that will, or strengthen relationships that will help them continue on even after the training opportunity. And then the other mode is a shorter delivery of more informational type of content, where people have said they need to, they'd like to know get some more information about how to do a particular thing better. And so those will be shorter, like online learning modules, but hopefully the idea is to tailor them in a way that make them relevant and interesting enough so that people actually want to do them. It's not like a compliance training video that you have to go through and grudgingly do. They're interesting. So that's where we are. We just kicked off. We're on schedule. It's expected to deliver October, November, and along the way we'll have the same kind of evaluation and dashboarding, so we know what's working, what's not working, so we can build on that for any future training decided to do. Sorry, that was longer than I thought. Any questions? Yeah, Maria. Yeah. So Maria asked if it's the same company, and the short answer is yes.
Any other questions? Any remote questions? Nope. Okay, great. So the next thing is, and this is what we've already covered, is the plan, is newcomers. And I divided this into newcomers at IETF just to give you some idea of what we did at this IETF meeting. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what our next steps are for the various newcomer activities. The first thing, and sort of related to what you were mentioning about staffing, we've had increasing amounts of secretariat support over the last couple times, and Michelle has joined the team, and we also have Jenny, who's been working with us on the newcomer stuff. And we have a series of meetings in advance to review what we've done in the past, decide what we're going to do this time, and then execute them and send out all the emails and those kinds of things. So the activities that we have are the newcomers overview, and I just lumped these all together because they're related. What was originally the newcomers tutorial has evolved into a series of videos that are online, a couple of Q&A sessions that we've been doing in advance, and then the in-person tutorial that we provided on Sunday. This time we updated the in-person tutorial, but we did not get the videos updated, so we have some work to do there. But that's the tutorial information on getting started in the IETF. The next set of activities are networking activities, which are really about getting people to meet each other and talk to each other. We had quick connections on Sunday evening. That was quite successful. And we have the Monday night dinner that the Secretariat organizes was also quite successful last night. And we are going for one virtual coffee break this time. I believe it was earlier today, and I didn't actually make it. So in Gather. So we're still trying to figure out, when we were all virtual, we had a better idea of how to handle remote attendees on the social or hallway track part, but we're really struggling with good ideas on what to do to incorporate newcomer activities for virtual attendees. So I think that is a tough one. The guides program team ran a guides program this time. Last I heard, there was 11 matches for that. And that is the program where you can sign up in advance and get matched with somebody. And then the final thing we will have will be some feedback sessions. There'll be one on site on Thursday, and then we're going to have a remote one in a week or two, which is for any of the newcomers, but it also gives a better opportunity for the remote folks to participate. In addition to this set of activities, there is a there's a web page, the newcomers page, that gets updated with all of the activities, and there's a series of emails that go out, and that's all done by the Secretariat. So that was basically our program for this IETF. So next steps for newcomers, and go ahead. In the queue you are.
Yes, it's Andrew Campling speaking. I'm just curious, did you know what the numbers of newcomers were for this session?
We know what they are. I don't know, Michelle, you want to go through the numbers?
A particular session or for the overall meeting?
Oh, sorry, for the meeting. Just rough idea.
I can look that up really quickly. Okay.
Alexa is checking for those of you online.
So question for Karen and Michelle, would it be okay to share the document that you wrote about the newcomers activities in the chat? Just so people can see. I mean, we meet every 2 weeks for like 10 weeks before, which means go home, rest for a month, and then we start planning for the next one. So just so people can see it and see the nice table. I don't know if there's any objections to sharing that.
I was going to just put a, I don't know if, I don't think there's anything. Sir? Are we ready to share this, or?
I don't think there's any secret information.
Well, there's nothing secret in here, but there might be like, misspellings or,
Well, yeah, in that document, there are a series of like tasks that have to be done as far as when emails go out, reminders that go out. So it's a lot of basically check marks for the Secretariat staff to make sure that we don't forget to do particular things. And then there is a very small calendar of the newcomer activities, what is remote and what is on site. And then we do have some participation numbers in a table that we're going to track more closely from now on for all the different newcomer activities. So hopefully we'll have some concrete data from now going forward to be able to compare and see how we're doing. That's what's in that document that Rich is referring to.
So this is Robert.
Maybe
when something like that is shareable, I suggest sending it to the team list or program list. When you're thinking about what to do in sessions like this one, remember that the recording is going to be available on YouTube, and choose what content you share appropriately.
Okay, Robert, I could barely hear you. Did I understand that you think it is appropriate to share or not? To be careful with it.
I'm surprised that you're having trouble hearing me. Is this better?
You fade in and then get reasonably loud and then fade out.
Medico must be doing something underneath me at this point then, because I'm right up against my microphone. I will type what I said into the stream. You can read it there.
Yeah, it's mostly a volume problem, by the way, Robert.
Yeah, but I just put it in the chat.
Do you want Drew to go ahead?
Pardon?
Drew's in the queue.
Yeah, Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Regarding one of the data points that we talked about even earlier was we wanted to understand a little bit better about newcomers' behavior especially for virtual ones, that are they here only for a single session? Are they attending multiple IETF meetings? That could also help us to, like, trigger how to bring them into the IETF community a little bit better. Because that's the feedback somehow I got with the newcomers that I was dealing with, that they were attending only a single session, and I was slowly trying to say that get involved in more activities. But that's just like, one or two cases that I am aware of. I wanted to know what's happening otherwise with a lot of people, because I was tracking number of people who were joining from my region, and they really did shoot up virtual ones from India, and I wanted to retain that. And one thing that came up was that people were like, finding it hard to attend multiple groups in a remote setting. And I wanted to know like more concrete numbers on that from other regions, and otherwise, if that information could be made available, I think it would be a pretty good info for this group as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I do remember we had some of those conversations, and I think we're looking at how to get better data. So thank you. Pete?
Yeah, I was just wondering, with regard to like the coffee breaks and the dinner and such, what is the aim to get sort of the newcomers in their own community to be able to have buddies among the newcomers, to get them to meet leadership? What's the purpose?
To me, the purpose is for them to meet to meet each other and to meet a few friendly faces at the IETF. One of the challenges with asking the leadership to do too many things during IETF week is the leadership is very busy. So this is, a few, like I know Rich and I have done a number of these coffee breaks virtually, and just whoever shows. And actually, when they've been on the schedule, especially virtually, face to face, it's been harder, but virtually, like sometimes some of the leadership will show up for that. But
and if I could add my 2 cents, I think that the quick connections is great to connect newcomers to working group chairs and people that know something about the IETF at the very beginning of the week. And the intent of the Monday night newcomers dinner, it was newcomers only, really. So it's really about bonding, like a freshman class of IETFers, and getting them to form some bonds. And then I think that the coffee breaks are sort of like, you've been here for a couple of days, you have a quick question, is there something that we can help you with? So those the different roles that I see those things playing.
Okay, thank you. So I did. Okay, so we have, Robert was saying that, remember the session will be available later, choose what you display appropriately. So I don't think there's anything inappropriate in that document. It's just we did it as an internal document, as a help to ourselves, and not necessarily something that we planned to post on a website. But it does, I have provided the link if you want to go in and take a quick look, especially if you're interested in helping, because you'll have some idea of what you're getting yourself into. So the next steps, like I said, we're cleaning up and getting even more organized. I think we continue to learn that the more that we can get done in advance about, understanding what goes on the web page, what goes in the emails that need to go out, when the emails need to go out, and the more that we can have that pre-stage, which is really what Michelle and Jenny have been doing, is really helpful. So for IETF115, there's a couple things I wanted to highlight. We will have a review of 114 when we start our meetings up. And in that, we look at what do we think worked well, what wasn't really that effective, are there any new ideas that we want to try? So now's a really good time if anybody has any new ideas to drop them on the mailing list or something like that. And we'll come up with the plan for 115. The idea here is that it's an evolving program. So what it is this year is not what it's going to be next year. I don't see us throwing everything out and starting from scratch. I see us evolving it and making improvements as we go. We do know that we need to work on the survey, and there's already some drafting work been done on that in our last series of meetings. We want to look at what are our success measures and how do we measure that success. One of the interesting things we've been discussing a little bit about is that, is success somebody coming and participating in newcomer programs, or is success somebody coming to the IETF and being successful in the work that they want to do? So, a good number of newcomers come to the IETF and they have support from their institution and they have support from colleagues that they already know, and they may not need to participate in newcomer programs, whereas other people come to the IETF and they're not at all familiar and they really like that support. And so I think we have to be really careful with the metrics that we define, and I think we've struggled with that for a while. So, so we still have that set of activities. We are looking at extending the IETF Guides program. We're planning to have a brainstorm on that in the near future. We're going to have it on, when are we having it? Is it the 15th? Do you remember the date?
We're going to actually, we're going to reschedule it for a date
Oh,
in August.
you're right. It's going to be rescheduled for a date in August, and it will be announced on Emodir. So anybody that's interested in coming to a session specifically on brainstorming around the IETF Guides program, it's how can we better support virtual attendees, and how can we make it a program that is not tied so specifically to meetings, and other things as well. But that's really what drove us to this point. And so with that, I'm looking to Michelle. Is there anything else we want to say?
I don't think at this time. We're just really dissecting everything that's happening at 114 and really noting what worked well and what didn't, and any improvements that we can make. And I've been talking to a lot of newcomers at this meeting, and I'm going to be following up just to gather feedback. And I'm happy for anybody to talk to me about their experience and what was missing, because that's really what we're trying to figure out also. And like Karen said, we're trying to figure out those measures of success, and we're trying to be very careful, and we're going to incorporate what we come up with in future surveys to really focus in on what information we're trying to collect and measure. So, Andrew.
Yeah, hi, it's Andrew Campling. I'm conscious that a while ago, Jay, from one of the previous surveys, one of the stats that really jumped out at me was the number of first-time participants that we never see again. So they come once and then, for whatever reason, that you might infer that way maybe it wasn't a good experience or it achieved whatever they wanted. But do we or will we ask, are you going to come again, and if so, why? And if not, why not? Something as simple as that, just to get a sense of, because they made the effort of coming once. It'd be a shame if we continue with that such a high attrition rate, because that feels really bad.
So we're definitely talking about that exact questioning. We just have to really figure out how we want to ask it. Yeah, but we're definitely talking about that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the Newcomers program? Nick is joining the queue. Go ahead, Nick.
I was curious if newcomers included just newcomers to an IETF meeting, or newcomers to IETF mailing lists, or IETF participation in general. It seems like it will be different. There would be different success measures and different needs.
So as you were saying that, I realized one of the other things that I had wanted to mention that was on our give a think about list is how we define newcomers. And years ago, newcomers were, it's your first time coming to a physical newcomer meeting, and then we changed it to 5 or fewer meetings, and now we think it's a even more general definition than that, and we don't know what that definition is yet.
Yeah, I wanted to add that as well. And thank you, Nick, for the question, because there's some interesting work by the SodaStream project, which is analyzing a lot of data from mailing lists archives, which are open. And for example, one of the conclusions that they came with was that people who joined a mailing list and then very soon after they joined a mailing list had an interaction with someone who was more experienced tended to stick around. And of course, we don't know if they had the interaction with the more experienced participant because their initial intervention was more interesting to experienced participants, or what the cause, the flow there is. But also just to point out that also, yeah, the current setup seems to be meeting specific, and I know there's thinking about that, and also even there's been discussion about the term of newcomer, because people who self-identify as very experienced technologists may not be attracted to things that are labeled as for newcomers. So yeah, just I know the conversation that Karen and folks are having is pretty nuanced about stuff.
Yeah, and just for another weirdness, I happened to be sitting in a room today where the chair had a newcomer's ribbon on their badge, because he's been around for a long time in the community and we know him from different circles, but he never came to meetings. And to a certain extent, it would probably be useful in some circumstances for him to do newcomer stuff, but in most, it wasn't. And so dividing down to, yeah, people who've been participating on the list and know us in different circumstances, but haven't been to meetings, are a class that we want to sort of bring in once they hit the list, not just now years after the case.
Yeah, I guess absolutely. That's what I was thinking, is that, right, I know there are going to be some, yeah, experienced people who show up at a meeting but they're already they're already ready to go because they have a lot of connections. Maybe they need some things about how the meeting is run. But I'm concerned more about that sort of pipeline effect of, there are lots of people who come to our mailing list one time, have a terrible experience and then leave, and then that person is not going to ever attend an in-person meeting. So it might be a different sort of programs, but there might be things we want to do to increase that pipeline at the sort of mailing list or online level.
Yeah, I think we're definitely interested in ideas on how to improve people's first experiences in the IETF. So is there anything else on the newcomer program we wish to discuss? John, go ahead.
Greg, and to the extent you have gotten an earful about this, as have some others, participants in directorate. But I think that one of the most important things we can do is that when somebody shows up on a mailing list to try to write a draft and intends to constructively participate, that we don't have people making assumptions about who they are and what their motives are and why they're doing those things, and then turning around and generally beating them up both on list and off list. In many respects, that's not a problem for this directorate, but it's usually not a problem for anybody else either. And it's definitely a problem if we are trying to recruit newcomers and recruit those people and anybody they might talk with. And I think there are some very significant steps we can be taking there that we are clearly not including, not making it hard to figure out who to contact about those issues, and not making the people they contact blow them off. Sorry, that's my rant for today.
No, thank you, John. I know we have teed up a conversation with you on this subject. So there was one thing I wanted to go back to real briefly on the, changing the meaning of newcomers. I mean, it's just like the sort of some of the challenges that we see here with the, the tooling. When we decide we're doing one thing and then we change it, sometimes that has a whole bunch of unintended consequences. So one of the things is that, through the registration system is where we identify newcomers, and it's run, it's set up and done a certain way. And if we change it, the registration system has to be changed, or the tags, or whatever. I don't know all the details of it, but these are things where we can't just snap our fingers and say, okay, this is the new thing. So we need to think it through and try not to make too many changes too frequently. But I do think that this is one we're definitely interested in looking at moving forward. All right. Anything else on newcomers? All right. So the next thing that we had teed up was an idea that Andrew had sent. Andrew sent you his slides and not me, right?
Yeah, that's a really good
Can you
point.
just send me your slides? So while he's doing this, I'm just going to skip over to a few things that we'll talk to at the end. One is we do have open meetings, like virtual meetings, roughly every 6 weeks, and they are announced on the Emodir mailing list, and they're listed in upcoming meetings, and so that's one way that you can participate. The second way, and a lot of you, I believe, are already this way, you can join the mailing list, and so, oh, look at that, slides from Andrew. And so part of what we're encouraging here is if people go back and look at the agenda and look at the I shouldn't talk. You should talk while I do this.
Karen is focused on getting these slides up so Andrew can be prepared or present. I don't think that there. I was just looking at our agenda. I think that there aren't any other items to cover, and I just did want to note that we're scheduled to end at 6:15, I think, and so if we haven't covered something here and you aren't yet signed up for the Emodir list, as Karen said, please sign up for the Emodir list. That's a good way to stay in touch. And if we don't cover something here now, we can definitely take up conversations on the list or the next. It's kind of a virtual interim, but not really. Yeah, it's not officially. Maybe it is officially virtual interim for Emodir. Yeah. So anyway, so if you have good ideas, please feel free to share them on the list, and then we can discuss them at the meeting.
And with that, you have slides.
Perfect timing. Can I change them from here or do? Okay, fine. Right, so this, just by way of a bit of context, this is something we discussed briefly at the last virtual meeting. So there's a bit of duplication with that, but I figured that since some of the people here weren't there, it'd be useful just to refresh memories and run through it. So it's a proposed outreach pilot. This is driven by, I think I certainly have a view that the voice of end users is not very strong in the IETF community, or it could be stronger, perhaps is a better way of putting it. And this is one activity of maybe several that will help to improve that and also to diversify the makeup of the community. So next slide, please. So the intent is to effectively diversify the participation beyond the tech sector in particular, with specific emphasis on civil society and on sort of enterprises in sectors other than the tech sector. It doesn't have to be exclusively limited to that, but that will be the sort of primary sort of two focus areas. And the objective would be to get I think Rich used, coined this phrase, the IETF curious, to come along to London, not to actually come to the main meeting, but to come to an event that would be effectively co-located with the main meeting to engage a bit and use that as a way to try and encourage them to engage more afterwards. Okay, so it just be using the fact that we're going to be in London and take advantage of having some of the community there to try and just get them to make the next step. And answering a question which sort of was posed, I can't remember by whom at their last virtual interim. I propose that we focus principally on people like directors of policy and sort of CTOs in those organizations, not because they will necessarily personally be the future participants, but they will, if they're persuaded that there's a business case, if you like, for their organization to be involved, they can then task people in their teams to then actually do the follow-up work. So it will hopefully save the time of their people having to write a business case if they're effectively their leaders make the decision it will be a good idea. So they just tell them to do it rather than have to be persuaded afterwards. And my assumption, for what it's worth, is because IETF114's in London, that it's most likely to be attractive as a session to people who are in Europe. Not that it'd be limited to that, but on the other hand, if the pilot is successful, then going forward, if it was something which was done regularly, then over time, it would diversify on a geographic basis as well as on a sectorial basis, the participation. Next slide, please. So for clarity, the objective is to broaden participation in the IETF, not necessarily in IETF meetings, just to be really clear, perhaps picking up on the conversation that we were just having, but it might be that the future engagement by those organizations might be on mailing lists or by authoring documents, or it could be at meetings, or it could be any combination of those things. But if an organization is persuaded to get involved in mailing lists after that, I think that will be a reasonable success. Even if they don't come to meetings, I don't think that's important, as long as there's more engagement. The sort of structure I'm proposing is a half-day workshop, as I say, co-located at the same location as IETF115, just because that'll make the logistics a lot easier for everyone. Probably starting at lunchtime and running through to the evening, so half day. Doing it at lunchtime so that people that are coming from countries in Europe but not the UK, they got a chance to actually get there, and then they can sort of leave at the end rather than necessarily having to stay, commit to a stay overnight. But with remote access for those people that don't necessarily want to travel, that will be a bonus if we can do remote access as well. Next slide, please. And apologies for the small font. I put this together a bit quickly just before the meeting. So as a sort of proposed structure that, and this is only just as a working sort of suggestion, basically to start by explaining what the IETF is, and not just the IETF itself, but the various associated bodies, the IRTF, IESG, etc., how that all works, how it fits in with other standards bodies, how the governance of the whole thing works, and so on, just to explain the mechanics. Because for those of us that perhaps new, when you come to it new, it's all very strange. So just explaining that up front will, I think, reduce the complexities to people that want to engage in it. And my suggestion is that Jason and/or Jay would be the ideal people to maybe lead that session, because they probably know that pretty well, I would hope. Then to bring in, I think it'd be useful to get a sense of, so what does the IETF do? And I think it'd be really good to bring in the area directors to each explain in very high level terms what their area does, maybe with a view to saying, focus, not try and explain everything, because that will take probably a day for each one, but say pick one or two working groups that they think will be more easy to understand and more directly relevant to the target community, and just say what they're currently working on that is relevant to that target community, rather than everything that they do, which is a long conversation, and a lot of the stuff, let's be honest, is quite obscure and wouldn't be very understandable. So just pick the exciting stuff. basically. So to give sort of 10 minutes plus 5 minutes Q&A for each area. So using the fact that we're on site with the meeting to bring the area directors into the room physically in person. Then move on to explain how to engage with the IETF, because obviously that's the primary objective of this. So, you know, through the mailing lists, through the meetings, interim meetings, drafts, etc., etc. So just bring that to life, how they can do stuff with the community, and then finish off with a plenary and Q&A and some networking. And I don't think I've got a next slide, but just in case I have. Oh, I did have a next slide. Right, excellent. I'm glad I said that. So, and then finally, I've had some very informal discussions with potential participants. So some business bodies, some civil society groups, just literally to say, explain the concept and say, if we were to do this, would you come? So not committing the fact that it will happen, but just say, hypothetically, if this sort of thing were to happen, would you be sufficiently interested to come? Would you recommend this to your members to come, etc., etc. And so far, everyone that I've spoken to has said yes, that they would. And I have pressed them a bit to make sure they're just not being polite and they actually do mean that they would come. And they assure me that that's the case. But two final points. One is, London's not that very far away time-wise, so were we to do this, it's going to take some time to actually spread the word and get people to get it in their diary. So we would need to make a decision sooner rather than later whether we want this to happen. I'm happy to really lead on getting people to commit to come, but really need some help from the sort of the IETF team in terms of making sure that there is a room that this is going to happen in. That we can get the area directors to come along and, you know, basically all the really complicated logistics. It's, you know, I can get sort of bums on seats, but there need to be seats and people to talk to them and all the organizational stuff. So it needs an early decision sooner rather than later whether this feels like the right thing to be doing. And I'll stop there.
Something that just popped in my head that's probably pretty critical, as you were talking about having the ADs come in to talk. You know, the IETF week is a crazy week for them. And I think we're going to have to do some careful planning with finding time slots that would work. And just that's probably, if that's really important to have them there, that's probably something that has to be considered very, very soon.
Thanks. I would just, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, because I actually want to add something. I think there's actually zero chance to get like most of the area directors in there. We just discussed some kind of retreat-like things that the IAB thinks that they could attach to a meeting, but for the IHG, this is kind of impossible. So I don't think if you want, especially if you want to have this in like this large scope, that is absolutely impossible, I think. Also, I really want to say that there's a big difference between policymakers and industry. And I think they not only need different information, they also need different treatment. And when it's about policymakers, I think the IB needs to be involved, and I think we should rely on ISOC, because ISOC has already these relations to the policymakers that we should rely on. And there's also like a whole lot of sensitivity here. I mean, I understand that you mainly want to explain how the IETF works to these people, and that is a very important task, and we should definitely do that. But when you actually give policymakers the chance to come and have this special forum, we also have to be prepared for all kind of questions which might be very sensitive. And so I think we should not like do this easily. Yeah, I think that's my point. No, one more point. I actually have it on my list to talk to ISOC about providing some kind of forum, maybe in a much smaller sense, to have an exchange with policymakers.
And just to be fair, Andrew did reach out to me and ask ISOC's opinion on this, and I just haven't gotten back to him yet. So there's a lot of, so I do think that there's some opportunity there, but we'll have to talk about it further. And obviously, we're in no position to commit at this point.
I just want to chime in and say I think Mira's point about the area directors is a good one. I mean, I've seen some of the scheduling conversations. It's so hard. That said, I love this idea. I think this would piggyback on some outreach efforts that I'm interested in from, fundraising and recruitment. I also think it would be really good in helping us understand how to talk to different audiences. And, I agree the policymaker conversations are different, but those who work for industry and then work in policy, I think can straddle that line. And I think there's a really interesting opportunity for engagement there. So I do agree there's a lot of logistical complications. That said, if you are looking for an internal champion, I will be one with you.
I just wanted to say, don't hang your hat too much on just having IASG people. There are sufficient numbers of us ex and sufficiently gray-haired people to do this kind of stuff and not interfere with their whole week, which I think with ADs you're inevitably going to do. So there's lots of people who can do this.
And then I think we have Drew.
Yeah, I just want to echo one more point. I think, especially with enterprise, if we have folks from the enterprise also come in and say, why do they participate? That would be very helpful. Because when we go and preach from our side that IETF is this great organization, I think why is the most important question, that why should enterprise even care? And for that, instead of focusing too much on what IETF does and how what is still important, like how IETF functions is not the most important thing. It's like, why should they participate? And if we can have some case studies on even listen directly from enterprise folks which are currently there. We know that we have very few, but they are here, and we could maybe use them as our the main champions rather than ADs.
I know we got the queue, but Mira, did you have one thing you wanted to say?
Yeah, I want to emphasize this again, that I think policymakers and industry lead is a very different audience, and we should not put them together because they need different information. And I think Lee Berkeley and Drew were more talking about enterprise or industry, and so that's a different business. Sorry, it's already late. I lost my thought. It was something else. So I think the challenge here is actually to for policymakers, we also should rely on ISOC's context, right? So this is something that is more straightforward for me. But I think the challenge is not organizing this workshop. The challenge is actually get the right people into the workshop.
Andrew wants to say one.
Okay, Andrew, please.
Yeah, so just on the policymakers, I should say my background is as a policymaker in industry. So in case I wasn't clear, the intent here is ideally to have pairs of people, so the sort of CTO and the director of policy together, because the CTO clearly should be more familiar with the technical aspects up to a point. The policy director will have a much better understanding of how that relates to what their business is trying to achieve. And the point is to have the two together wherever possible.
Okay, so you're not talking about governmental representatives.
No, this is
okay,
policy directors in industry.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. But you also had civil society on there, and I would put them rather in the bucket together with governmental representatives from the kind of information they might be looking for.
Okay, so the sort of people I spoke to in civil society, some of them have policy directors and also CTOs within civil society groups. So again, and that's not true of all of them, by the way. Some of them don't have CTOs, but those that do, I think it'd be much more effective to have both together. They'll get more out of a discussion than either coming in isolation.
So maybe we should actually look through the list of people more concretely that you've been in touch with. I think that would be very useful.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of agreement about the potential value of the kind of outreach, but maybe just not the exact proposed format. So I didn't hear anybody say, no, you shouldn't do this, but just maybe not in this format. And it also feels like there's an energy around the table or around the virtual table I saw some comments in the chat. Maybe there's a kind of conversation that can continue. And I know time is short for 115, but I don't know, Karen, what you think about that.
Well, I think if we're going to do it for 115, we need to have some additional conversations, and we need to get those scheduled very soon. I would start with suggesting the group of people that are really interested in helping to drive it, to define this and drive it. If you could perhaps identify yourselves to Greg and I afterwards, and then we can see what the possibilities are. And then I think we are going to need to get leadership sign off on this. We're going to need to, and resourcing sign off.
Yeah, if it involves any IETF leadership or IETF resources, for sure.
Yeah. So it's not I think that there is a lot of energy, and there's some good ideas here. We need to figure out how to move forward with them. Part of what we're trying to do with Emodir is to define things as little projects that can pretty much work, that can get critical mass and move forward. So Lee, are you willing to work on this? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I assume
And
he'll be my right-hand man. Yeah.
all right, so it's 6:17, and so I was going to ask Amira, I don't know if you wanted to, we went over the plan, and I said that there were some quick start guides, and that you were working on coordinating a bunch of us. Did you want to say anything more, or is that enough? That's it. Okay. So I deeply thank everybody for coming. I think this has been a really good turnout and a really positive discussion. Join the mailing list, volunteer to help in the specific things that you're interested in, and join the next virtual interim meeting that we have, which will probably be in roughly 6 weeks or so. And with that, everybody that's here, go enjoy the social, and all the remote people, enjoy wherever you are. And thanks everybody again.
Yeah, thank you.